This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
Would you say no men in female sports?
I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that.
Just dole out the money directly to the states and let the states handle the education process.
We'll be watching very carefully to make sure if this has a significant negative effect on pricing. I think there's lots of reasons to believe that might not happen. It didn't happen last time.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Good afternoon and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Family Life News anchor Sarah Harnish. Wind advisories are in effect for more than 100 counties in New York and Pennsylvania, and Cayuga County is under a flood warning until 9 o'clock tonight. Kevin's got details on your forecast in a few minutes. Chaos unfolded on the floor of the U.S. House today.
The House had come to order. The House had come to order.
Democrats forming a line around Texas Congressman Al Green and singing a civil rights song as he was being censured for repeatedly interrupting Donald Trump's speech to Congress earlier this week. Green took to the mic and gave an explanation.
I respect the Speaker. I did disrupt. And I did so because the president indicated that he had a mandate. And I wanted him to know that he didn't have a mandate to cut Medicaid.
Speaker Mike Johnson told Fox News every lawmaker's beliefs matter, but how Congress treats each other shows the world whether or not democracy works.
We have to maintain the dignity of this place. We're the greatest deliberative body in the history of the world. There's a deep and rich tradition here, and it is violated. To our understanding and our review of history, that was the first time that any member of Congress has ever had to be removed in the middle of a presidential address, and it's shameful.
10 Democrats voted for Green's censure as well, including New York's Tom Suozzi and Pennsylvania's Chrissy Houlihan. Now to California and an unlikely ally. In a twist of events, one of America's most liberal governors just did an about-face on transgender boys in girls' sports. Gavin Newsom.
The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate
But would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that.
Just as surprising, he made the remarks on his own podcast after inviting 31-year-old influencer Charlie Kirk to the interview, who's best known for starting Turning Point USA, a conservative organization on college and high school campuses. It represents a remarkable break from Democratic Party philosophy in one of the nation's bluest states, and it's creating a ripple effect across the country. Multiple LGBTQ plus organizations issuing statements this afternoon. Then hours ago in Washington, D.C., Representative Kevin Kiley, also of California, challenged Newsom on the open house floor to put his words into action.
Today, I am calling on California Governor Gavin Newsom to immediately issue an executive order to protect women and girls' sports in California, and to ask the legislature for legislation codifying in law that men shall never compete in women's sports in California again.
Also in D.C., we're awaiting word to what President Trump does with the Department of Education. Some Democrats, like California Senator Adam Schiff, say it would be better to shut the department down than hack away at its budget and its employees.
I don't want to see this kind of death by a thousand cuts that we're witnessing now.
Becky Pringle is president of the National Education Association.
The impact is happening right now on students and educators around this country, where grants that no longer exist are causing teaching jobs to go away.
Betsy DeVos was the education secretary in Donald Trump's first term.
We had COVID, and Americans' eyes were open to just what an abject failure this federal agency has been. One of the most important ways to get power back to a more local level is to simply take the funds appropriated by Congress and block grant them back to the states.
Our own Bob Price sat down with Dr. Ralph Kerr of the Teaching and Learning Institute.
How is this going to change education policy in this country?
Well, I don't think it's going to change a lot. The idea is to dismantle a department and then distribute the work amongst other departments that then would dole out the money directly to the states and let the states handle the education process. We don't need thousands of bureaucrats in Washington telling states and local school districts what they need to do.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon would be tasked with the facilitating of the closure of the the Education Department. Such a move, though, would require congressional approval. President Trump says there will be an almost 1-month tariff delay on most products from Canada and Mexico. Trump signed an executive order today that delays tariffs on all goods under the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is not a fan of tariffs.
Our Pennsylvania dairy farmers sell more product to Mexico than any other state. So when you are a Pennsylvania farmer trying to sell your milk or your cheese to Mexico as a result of the president's tariffs, our products now cost more in Mexico. Mexicans are going to buy less product from Pennsylvania, or maybe no product at all.
Pennsylvania's junior U.S. Senator Dave McCormick says the cost of goods on the average American is not lost on the president.
We'll have to see how this plays out. We'll be watching very carefully to make sure if this has a significant negative effect on pricing. I think there's lots of reasons to believe that might not happen. It didn't happen last time, but the president will be able to adjust. I know he's very sensitive to prices and making sure that working families can afford the things they need.
Back at it, U.S. and Ukrainian officials will be in Saudi Arabia next week to hold peace talks to create a framework for an initial ceasefire with Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attempting to repair relations with the U.S. following a heated exchange with Trump at the White House. And a private U.S. company landed a spacecraft on the moon while you were at lunch today.
Confirm. Powering down, it does take quite a bit of energy to land.
Houston-based Intuitive Machines touched down the Athena non-manned spacecraft near the lunar South Pole. CBS space consultant Bill Harwood.
It's a very significant mission. It's showing that a commercial company can put payloads on the moon for NASA.
Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, striking New York corrections officers say they're closer to a deal. Changes are coming for Pennsylvania's voter registration system and the logistics of what it looks like to be salt and light. Our own Greg Gillespie sits down with the man that runs a database charting 500 of the nation's largest Christian ministries with some insight. Those stories after weather with Kevin Williams.
Now the week will end as it began, on a wintry note with wind and chill and some lake flakes. For most of us, it means just a few passing flurries. There'll be a few inches accumulating in spots east and southeast of Lake Ontario and a couple inches southeast of Lake Erie. Low temperatures tonight, 20s. Wind chills often single digits and below. High temperatures Friday, mainly in the 30s. Saturday, brisk cold, clouds, a couple flurries, and some sun. High temperatures Saturday, upper 20s and 30s.
Thank you, Kevin. Those winds gusting to 45 miles an hour this afternoon. Wind advisories won't be lifted for most of us until 4 a.m. on Friday. A deal is imminent, so says the Times Union on striking New York State corrections officers. They're expected to vote on an offer from the state today, but no word yet on what's going on behind closed doors. If approved, thousands of officers could return to work as early as Friday morning, ending their 18-day-long walkout. At the center of discussions, the state's controversial HALT Act, which limits the use of solitary confinement as a form of inmate discipline. Anisha Sabur tells WGRZ she helped lead efforts to get the HALT Act passed.
We did this because we know that solitary is torture. It causes devastating harm, death, and it worsens safety for everybody.
But striking officers say the HALT Act has endangered their safety. Attacks on prison staff went from 1,000 to nearly 2,000 since that act was passed. Chris Summers is head of the State Corrections Officers and Police Benevolent Association.
We can't repeal HALT, so we need to make revisions to HALT, make it safer for both sides.
Guards say they will not return to work until safety and staffing issues are rectified. Pennsylvania is moving to upgrade its voter registration system, spending more than $10 million to replace its electronic voter registration database known as SURE. Secretary of State Al Schmidt says a new civics system should be ready to roll in time for the 2028 presidential election. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul weighed in today on the future of the U.S. Department of Education. She said the end of that department would be catastrophic for the Empire State.
$5 billion in cuts We're talking about billions of dollars lost in Pell Grants, money for kids with disabilities, programs that are helping our kids in rural areas and mental health. I mean, what they're doing is saying our kids don't matter. What's more important is that we slash for the sake of slashing and also be able to fund tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires.
The Trump administration has repeatedly said federal cash will continue to go to the states. They just want the power and the decision making to belong to the states, too. Next at 5, Christian journalist Warren Smith has a lover's quarrel with the evangelical church. He says many congregations and denominations are inwardly focused on their problems and fail to live up to a biblical mandate to be salt and light to their surrounding culture. Let's listen in.
Look at some of the underlying assumptions of evangelicalism. I think a lot of Christians think that if our church is getting bigger, if we have more people in the pews and more dollars in our collection plate, that God must be blessing us, that is a sign of fruitfulness. The Bible measures fruitfulness with language like love and joy and peace and patience and long suffering. In other words, we measure the wrong things. In reality, we've adopted the measuring sticks of a secular materialistic world. And I think that folks that are looking at the church, when they see us using the same measuring sticks as the world uses, I think that's a real problem. We've become folks that are enamored with the next big thing. And I think that as believers, we need to start focusing on community. We need to start focusing on, what we can do in our own homes, in our own churches, and less so on what happens in Washington, D.C. or New York City or, Hollywood or some of the other culture centers of the world. That if we're going to be salt and light, which of course is what Jesus calls us to be, we've got to get out of the salt shaker and into the world. Too often, Christians will kind of get in their own little enclave and they don't interact with the world except to criticize the world. The best critique of something that has gone wrong is to build something beautiful in its place. In fact, Michelangelo said that when I want to criticize, I make something beautiful. And you don't have to criticize the ugly. All you have to do is put the beautiful down next to it, and everybody can see the difference. Unfortunately, I think what Christians too often focus on is criticizing the ugly rather than building something beautiful that the world will notice and want to be a part of.
You can subscribe, listen to, and share Faith Under Fire and all of Family Life's original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or at familylife.org. Time next for tonight's market report brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Wall Street is closing with stocks sharply lower. At the final bell, the Dow lost 427 points to 42,579. The S&P 500 dropped 104 points to 5738, and the Nasdaq fell by 483 points to 1869. Faithward Advisors is a Christian financial planning firm online at faithwardadvisors.com.
Are you financially free or in bondage to money? Hi, I'm Rob West with your Faith and Finance Minute. It's one or the other. Either you control your money or your money controls you. True financial freedom means you have options. You have a greater ability to decide where and how to live. In some cases, even where you work and how much you work. Financial freedom also enables you to be more generous. Folks often say they'd love to give more to God's kingdom, but they just can't afford to. The more you control the money flowing through your household, the more generous you can be. So how do you get there? Get on a budget, pay down debt, save for the future. Do those things and you're well on your way to true financial freedom. Connect with a certified Kingdom advisor who's been trained to deliver financial advice that aligns with your Christian values by visiting our website, faithfi.com.
Coming up on the 5 o'clock report, it is good to be a dad of girls. That story after weather with Kevin Williams.
Gusting winds ushering in colder air will prevail tonight through the rest of the work week and heading into the start of the weekend. For most of us, it means just a few passing flurries, but lake effect snow will be an issue for some. Lake effect snow could give an inch or two in spots southeast of Lake Erie, several inches in spots east and southeast of Lake Ontario. Low temperatures tonight, 20s. Wind chills, single digits and below. High temperatures tomorrow, 30s and low 40s. Saturday, clouds, breaks of sun, couple flurries. Brisk and cold. High temperatures, upper 20s and 30s.
Thank you, Kevin. Finally, at 5, a new study has found that dads who have daughters live longer. Here's Family Life's resident girl dad, news anchor Mark Webster.
Thank Kevin. Yeah, this isn't the first study to reach that conclusion either. This one says the more daughters, the better. A gain of 74 weeks in lifespan for each one. Dr. Mike Sirigliano speculates part of it might be because women are nurturers by nature, including taking care of their parents in their old age.
When I'm hearing the paint dry someday in some place, she'll come and my son might send me a postcard.
Well, as Psalm 127 says about daughters and sons, blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. Thank heaven for little girls. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
And that's the world that we live in for Thursday, the 6th of March. I'm Sarah Harnish, and this is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.